بدون رجوع meant without the chance of coming back, a one-way trip. This is what the Egyptian government did to many Jewish families. When they kicked them out, they stamped on their travel documents, بدون رجوع. We don't want to see you again. This is a one-way trip.
Well, in 1948, we were some 100,000 Jewish in Egypt. And now you can find there only perhaps 20, 30 old people. So we could say that the Jewish community in Egypt is not anymore. It's finished, vanished.
As I was watching the door close, and it was a little bit dark, the lights were off, the sun wasn't strong anymore, the curtains were down, and there was this beautiful home, neat, clean, the beds were made, all these beautiful Persian rugs, big rugs, and we were just closing it, and we left.
We left, and we lost everything. We lost the business, we lost his manufacturing shop and his retail shop, and we left behind, unfortunately, a very beautiful villa with a garden full of orange blossoms and lemon blossoms, which till now I can remember.
When we reached the airport, we had no idea what was going to happen. I mean, I had no idea if we were going to see our parents again, if we were going to be reunited again, if we were going to get killed or be let go, or nothing. We knew nothing.
The only thing we could take with us were a few clothes. I had left a very valuable and very dear stamp collection, but I did take out with me my Star of David. It was made by my grandfather, and the necklace was made by my father. I was able to get it out, and luckily they didn't search me, because if they had, the Egyptian authorities at the customs would have pulled it from my neck.
In Yemen, Jews faced a wave of rioting. International rescue groups began to plan for an emergency airlift of Yemenites to Israel. But many had never seen an airplane before. Shimon Avi Zemel, a Yemenite Jew who fled to Palestine in 1935, was sent on a mission back to Yemen to rescue thousands of Jews in danger.
When I came to this desert, there were nearly 4,000 people in the desert, in that camp, that terrible camp. There was only sand and very little huts that they live in. What we had to do, only to teach them, to prepare them for Israel, to teach them the Hebrew. You know, in that desert, I had 2,500 pupils, 2,500 pupils from 3 years old until 60 years old. And they loved their learning, and, spirit was very high. In what? In that desert, in that sand, in that terrible heat, terrible heat. They never complained. Why? Because they waited, they hoped. They knew that tomorrow we shall be saved. Tomorrow we shall go to Israel. On Shabbat, we read that part of the Torah. It was Parashat Yitro. And in Parashat Yitro, we read that word, Va'esa etchem al kanfe nesharim va'avi etchem. And I shall take you, with the eagle wings, to Israel. The Jewish community in Yemen lived the Torah, and they believed that this nesher, is the aeroplane. And when the aeroplane came the following day, and the Sunday, the eagle, or if you want, the aeroplane, came and took the first wave to Eretz Israel. وتجد ابن إسرائيل التمر إيثام عشر أوسيثي لمصرايم وأسود خم الكنفين شوريم وبيخام
For those who remained in Arab countries, government persecution only grew more intense. In 1969, Saddam Hussein began his rise to power. As a show of force, he arranged for a public hanging of 9 Jews in the middle of Baghdad. 500,000 people attended the hangings.
And it was shown all over the world on TV, and there were masses of people there singing and dancing, around the bodies. In 1972, it was on the eve of Yom Kippur. After receiving really such sad letters from my father that he felt so lonely, and he was really hoping that, he get a passport and join us. We heard that he was actually abducted on his way to the synagogue, and we don't know until today what happened to him exactly. We didn't really have Kaddish for my father throughout these years.
In Egypt, following the Six-Day War, the government arrested all Jewish men and forced them into concentration camps.
They took the 400 male Jews between the age of 16 and 60 and put them in these concentration camps. One of them is called Abu Zabal. And they beat them, and they tortured them, and they humiliated them. The things they did, I cannot say, because they are so horrible. My uncle was in there, and many of my relatives were included.
The persecution of the governments of Arab countries made the Jews in Arab countries desire to leave their origin country, but they didn't how, because no country was ready to receive them. So when the State of Israel was established, suddenly we have a shelter, and the Jews came to Israel.
When Israel was created, what it did was it unshackled the Jew from being under the rule and the control of Arabs and Islam. They became free and independent. And for the Arabs and for the Muslims, it is unacceptable for the Jew to be independent, because for 14 centuries, the Jews were under them.
According to the Muslims and the dhimmi rules, a majority state of Jews, a state where Jews are a majority or they are the rulers, is non-existent. It must never exist.
The fledgling Israeli government had little money and faced a war declared on it by 7 of its Arab neighbors. Still, 680,000 Mizrahi refugees were taken in and settled in temporary refugee camps called ma'abarot. They huddled in tents that could barely keep out the rain and mud.
They were put into tents, wooden huts. More than 10 years, those Jews were in tents as refugees.
My grandmother recalls that when they first got to the Ma'abarot and food was very scarce, and because couscous is a national dish in Libya, and it was not so easily available at the time, she used to take dry bread and dry it up in the sun and make into little bowls just to make it look like it was couscous.
During the country's early years, Mizrahi refugees struggled to overcome social discrimination.
I was really surprised myself how we did it here, because when we came we had nothing. We were for two years in the Ma'abarot. You know what a Ma'abara is. It's a place with a tent which the government gave us as refugees. I was a refugee for 2 years living in a tent. Imagine in the winter with the cold and in the summer with the heat. So, but what the Egyptian community did here was just, how to call it, they became self-made persons here.
The Iraqi Jews are hardworking people. They are very well educated, and you know, they were in the first line in the Iraqi economy. So in a way, they shifted all their skills to the Israeli efforts to establish a good economy and a good society.
There are no Jews left in Libya today. The Darvishi synagogue in Tripoli once overflowed with congregants on the Sabbath and on holidays. Today, it is abandoned and vandalized. Only a few dozen Jews remain in Iraq, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon. Outside Beirut, the Hamdoun synagogue sits empty. In Morocco, the El Husseini synagogue in the old Jewish quarter of Fez is now a boxing club. After Jews fled Iraqi Kurdistan in 1955, this synagogue was turned into a mosque. A dirt road was built over this old Jewish cemetery, with foot traffic exposing Jewish graves. Vibrant Middle Eastern communities that once numbered in the hundreds of thousands are no more. All told, nearly 1 million Jews have fled Arab countries and Iran, and hundreds of Jewish communities have been ethnically cleansed.
Behind every intimidation, behind every silencing, behind every persecution, behind every beating or murder of Jews from Arab lands, behind every property sequestered, behind every assets seized, behind every bank account blocked, we're talking about the historiography of an entire community.
If I say, who are the Middle East refugees, people don't think at all about the Jews. All the people think about are the Palestinians.
Many people ask me, why do you call yourself forgotten refugees? It is interesting to note that in the history of the Middle East, we have been totally cut out of the picture.
The United Nations General Assembly since 1947 has adopted 687 resolutions on the Arab-Israeli conflict. 101 of those resolutions dealt with refugees. But all of those 101 resolutions dealt with Palestinian refugees only. It's astonishing to realize that not one resolution, not one of these resolutions ever dealt with the issue of Jewish refugees from Arab lands.
So it was change of population between the Jews and Arabs. Both of them were refugees.
About 50% of the Jewish population today in Israel is made up of Mizrahi Jews, Jews like myself who came from the Arab countries. We are the face of Israel.